My dear poets, Lighthouse viewers, it is my pleasure to present to you the magnificent Edalia Day.
It was all fun and games. It was all fun and games until I got cancelled. Saying you're silenced and getting attention. Fighting the tyranny of people unheard. Avoiding discovery with a quick misdirection. It's all fun and games when it hasn't occurred to the people who listen, whose voices are unheard. I've been silenced. Hear me roar. Or don't. You probably won't. It's all fun and games when the clickbait is scrumptious, the headlines so teasingly sweet on the tongue, the lies and the bigotry pale in importance. If I'm silenced, I must be heard. Don't you dare spoil the fun of the loudest among us who go on being louder. I've been silenced. Hear me roar. Or don't. You probably won't. I've been silenced by the media for as long as I can remember. And despite all the arrogance in their victimized mirth, I'm still baffled that to the cancelled, it never occurred that people like me had been cancelled at birth. And it's only online we've begun being heard along with the others who were always unheard. We are unsilenced at last, our voicelessness absent, and the weight of our presence so heavy to bear that it is crushing the majority who were so unaware they would not know silenced if it bit their derriere. They are criticised children, shouting desperate defiance under the weight of the stare of adults who have put up with their shit for too long. Cancel culture's got out of hand. Out of whose hand? I've been silenced. Hear me roar. Or don't. You probably won't.
Good evening. I am Finn Bell, a poet, writer, and podcaster from the San Francisco Bay Area, and your host of the Poets Lighthouse. Thank you for joining us here on our 17th episode of the first season. Today, our guest is Edalia Day. Edalia is an animator, illustrator, poet, and theater maker based in Norwich, England. She is trained at Lecoq and Alra. Her theater is visually stunning with elements of interactive video, physical comedy, containing a childlike sense of play at its heart. She has been an actor for over 14 years, performing a wealth of television, Shakespeare, physical theater, children's theater, and in 2014, she began writing and producing her own show, starting with In the Surface of a Bubble. Edalia's current shows include Super Hamlet 64, about video games and Shakespeare, Too Pretty to Punch, about transphobia in the media, and Spectacular Spacebots, a series of picture books. Welcome to our studio, Edalia.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I see in you this aura of beautiful, childlike innocence that presents in your movements. And it both has joy and sadness contained, if that's possible in one space at one time. When you are performing, underneath the performance, who is this person?
Underneath, who is it? Well, it's me, I guess. It's a person who is it's a person who is excited by the beauty of the world, who's very geeky. I love getting geeky about things, about all sorts of like video games and even Shakespeare, all sorts of stuff. And at the same time, I am fed up with the. Am I allowed to swear?
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Absolutely.
fed up with the bullshit and the hypocrisy. Well, not even the hypocrisy, but just the ridiculous amount of stupidity and hate in the world. I hate that. It's just so. It really boils my blood. And so,
Yeah,
yeah. And so, what I end up doing, I end up performing in a very a silly, fun way, but also trying to tackle really fearsome truths about the world, which are just, yeah.
of course. Yeah, yeah, that does make perfect sense. You have to maintain that. I guess it's kind of like when they say that, in the face of this fearsome stuff, you kind of have to find the humor, or otherwise you give into it. You really do give into it.
Totally. Also, I find like as a performer, I like to try and change minds. And there are loads of different ways you
Of
can
course.
perform. Like, it's totally valid and good to be the kind of performer who's like, you need to change your minds. Everything's wrong. There's a total place for that. But I like to be quite soft with it. And I like to really, I think it's really useful to balance the audience's
Yes.
experience so that you can be like, hey, everything's fine, don't worry about it, and they're like, oh, I'm comfortable, everything's good,
Mhm.
and then you're like, ha, here is the serious stuff, and then but you don't want them to get too overwhelmed, so then you've got to be like, oh, hey, it's okay, I'm just going to do some comedy type stuff, we're all laughing, everything's fine. By the way, the world's falling apart. I like to
Yes.
balance it out. I think that's a healthy way.
Yes, I do see that gentle softness, but I see how like the storm creeps in very gently and unawares, and then once it is happening, it's kind of like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm going to listen to this. Me as an audience, I was like, okay, the way that it brought in, it was brought in with that spoonful of sugar, and then making it, it shouldn't be made more palatable. Honestly, it's a reality, but it just made it something that, hey, I had that little bit of sweetness in the beginning. I can continue on with this. I can move on with this. I can listen to this. So I love that you put that much of that thought behind it. So lovely
Thank you.
Lighthouse, you're welcome. Lovely Poets Lighthouse viewers, we will spend more time getting to know the enchanting Edalia Day when we return from our break. So Edalia, in your live stop motion film, Dream of Being Seen, you spoke the heartbreaking line, sometimes even your home is somewhere you can't go. So where do you go? Are we capable of making a home where we are safe and happy?
Yeah, totally. I think it's quite tricky
Mm.
in life. A lot of people are stuck in places. I mean, like, especially as a trans person, a lot of people.
Mhm.
There are all sorts of traps, all sorts of like prisons people can be in. They can be in a prison of like gender or their identity, but they can also be in prison of the spaces they're in, like um, a family home where you don't feel like you can be
Yes.
yourself, or um, or even where you live or your work. And I found, uh, yeah, coming out. I used to think, you come out and that's it. It's like I've come out. All the doors are open now, but it's not the case. You come out once, you have to come out again. You just come out to every new person you meet, well, depending on how your life works. And for me, I felt like the last, um, the last 5 years, definitely, of my
Mhm.
life has been really about like unlocking doors of myself, unlocking these doors and opening them and finding new doors and being like, oh, I didn't realize there was a door here, and opening it and going, whoa, check out this world, like metaphorically, but then
Yeah.
also It's been really important to sculpt the world around me and change the world and go, actually, hang on a minute. Right now I'm in a difficult situation which isn't serving me. I need to make a new home for myself. I need to change my home. I need to put a metaphorical potted plant in the corner that I water that translates my carbon dioxide into more oxygen. I need to have more ice cream in my home. You know, that kind of thing. Or more friends. And however that works. And yeah. It's interesting you pick up on that home thing.
And so when you said, I was really taken by you saying that having to come out again, to different people or coming out. You think it's a one-time thing and it happens when you are doing this. When you're doing this process of having to come out and reveal, your true self to a new person. Are you also kind of redoing that process for your own self? Are you reintroducing you to yourself, your true self?
No, I don't find that for myself. I mean,
Okay.
I do discover more about myself as time goes on,
Okay.
as I imagine happens for everyone, but also I'm exploring things and I do change in my perception of myself. So I suppose, to an extent that's kind of sometimes true. But the main thing I find with my life is I've got quite a firm idea of myself. And it's about going, how can I, the world's made of boxes, and I'm not a huge box fan. Some people love boxes, some people don't. It's just, sometimes they're really useful, sometimes labels can be good. I'm not a big label box fan for myself. But sometimes you've just really got to, because the world works in boxes, sometimes you've really just got to go. Sometimes, I found, say when I first came out, it's you go, right, here I am, world, boxless. And people are like, sure, but I'm just going to put this box on you, and I'm just going to put this box on you, and I'm going to put this one on you. And you go, no, well, no, but those don't fit. And they're like, sure, yeah, they fit. And you're like, no, they don't fit. And they're like, yeah, they fit. I hear you. And it's like, oh, this is frustrating. So sometimes then you've got to actually properly jump into all sorts of boxes, and you've got to go, hey, look, okay, that wasn't working, that non-box stuff. This is my box. And this is my box. And they're like, sure, I guess. This is your box, and this is your box, and this is your box. And you're like, no, this is your box. No, that's not my box. So then you're like, well, just chuck that box out. This is my box. And they're like, oh, okay. And maybe that box doesn't even perfectly fit you, but you've just got to find some way of getting through to this person, this thing that maybe over here, maybe they're never going to comprehend it. So you've just got to. So I find actually more my life is about, or my journey is more about knowing myself so strongly, and then going, finding all these people with all these rules in their heads about all sorts of things. And you've just got to go, how can I convey this to you to fit into your world?
Yes. And you're conveying it to them in the way that they speak and understand, and starting from there. I like the idea of the multiple boxes to explain it. It's a little bit more something that they can comprehend and jump off from that point. That's safe, and then maybe they can make the leap to see that there wasn't a box to begin with, but for their own safety. Oh goodness, yeah. So another moment that gripped me is in your poetry performance, Too Pretty to Punch. And I believe the way that it was titled, it was the Muddy Feet Live from the Genesis Slam. And this is where you stated, and I hope I'm phrasing this correctly, I am too cute to kill, too gorgeous to gut. So me, as a cisgender woman, I fear things for myself, for all my sisters who identify as women. These are things that I should not be horrified of, thoughts that are archaic, but those thoughts become violent action because the blueprint of how women are viewed has changed so very little. So I won't begin to say that I can even know the weight of sharing this terror and bringing your own experience as a transgender woman. But can you speak a little bit more on this perhaps, and how you process and deal with it?
Yeah. So so those lines are so those lines, I mean, that's the whole crux of the title for the show. Those lines are kind of sarcastic, but the piece is very serious. But it's this idea that, and I know there's loads more nuance to this, but the idea that as a trans person, there's generally this perception that, well, as long as you don't look trans, you're okay. Or we'll accept you as long as you don't look trans. And what that means, that doesn't even mean not necessarily looking trans. What that means is we'll accept you as long as you're stereotypically beautiful. Like you get things where people are saying, "Oh, we don't want trans women in our bathrooms or toilets, in our toilets," and then someone's like, "Oh, sure, but what about this trans woman?" And they show some supermodel trans woman who's drop dead gorgeous, and it's like, and they're like, "Oh, actually, now I see these. If trans people look like that, then actually that's okay," and that is great, of course, because you want to, you want acceptance, and that's great. These people get acceptance, and that's good. But like the majority, that's maybe mean, but the majority of trans people won't look like that, or will look like a mix, or have masculine features, all sorts of stuff. And I mean, in line with the same with cis women, there's just so much pressure to look beautiful, and that's such an important thing. And so, or that sort of that poem is all about that concept, mocking that concept. It's like there's loads of stuff in there. It's like, "Oh no, you can't attack me. I'm one of the pretty ones." And I know that's a very simplistic way to look at it as well, because also, the more, well, I talk about that in the poem as well, but the more stereotypically beautiful you get, the more probably sexist misogyny you get, and then the more other
Yes.
stuff, and then also there's all sorts of dangers of being that kind of trans woman as well. There's just loads of dangers. But yeah, so that's one side of the poem, and then another side is this danger of being attacked, but also the fear of violence. Like, I'm coming at this from a place of privilege. I'm white. I'm not fantastically well off, but I'm more well off than many people, and I'm well spoken. People look at me and think, "Oh, not a threat." Whereas other trans women, maybe they would think a threat. I mean, and there are loads of people who will look at me and think threat as well, But there's so much. Like, I've never actually been attacked in the street, which is great. But there's so much fear, in the media. I grew up hearing this statistic that 50% of, and I'm not sure this is true, but this is what I grew up hearing, 50% of trans women are either murdered or commit suicide by the age of 30. And there are terrible statistics, there are horrible statistics about trans people worldwide and stuff, and like Trans Day of Remembrance. You hear all these statistics, and in some ways it can be fantastic, because we need to remember that, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to be aware of that violence. But there can be a danger of spreading the fear that if you're trans, you're going to get attacked, and therefore you shouldn't come out. Don't come out into this world. Just stay in the closet.
Yeah.
You're going to get attacked. This is a dangerous place, and it is important to be aware of the dangers that do exist. And there are, depending on where you live as well, there are high chances of getting attacked, which sucks. But sometimes that narrative can do more harm than good, and can just.
That's true.
I was terrified for years, and I don't know. It's a mixed bag, isn't it? Because there are dangers, and it's important to be aware.
Yes, but you want to balance that fine edge of you're. I mean, I absolutely agree. Having that fear and living in that fear constantly. Are you actually just living your life and enjoying your life? But you can never really anticipate and know the future. Will this happen? But then again, very well could, you could live a long, happy, unfettered life living as you, and not have to deal with this. So you do weigh that. You're like,
Totally.
yeah.
And this is
So
like, and it's not, and I'm not like suggesting it's clear cut. This is a big, nuanced, messy topic
exactly.
with loads of things to it. And it's like, it's not like, oh, you won't get attacked after all. It's like, you might, there's always layers to it, but,
Yes.
and that's what I explore in the poem. But like,
Yeah.
for example, I used to do martial arts and I would like train and train and train. And I was filled with this fear of, what if I get into a fight? What if one day I get into a fight? I keep needing to train, train, train. And like, you can tear apart your life like that, thinking you constantly need to be on guard and you constantly need to be ready for that thing that might not happen.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's the thing. Life.
Yeah. I know this is a really terrible analogy, but I all of a sudden started thinking of the people who have heart disease and their doctor tells them have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning every day, have a bowl, and then you hear later on, oh, they died of heart disease. They did all these preventions and it still happened. You can't control these factors, but you go on living your fullest life that you can. So yeah, I know that was a terrible analogy that just struck in my mind all of a
No,
sudden.
that's cool. I liked it. That was nice. And
Okay.
it's like, well, yeah, but it's difficult, and it's I don't know. I always feel like if you can do the things that feel wonderful and beautiful to you,
Hmm.
if you can combine those things, like maybe
Exactly. Wonderful.
you hate oatmeal, but you love rice milk, so you have rice milk with everything. That's good. I don't know, whatever. I'm
There
not
you
a
go. I
rice.
know. Add that little element of lovely and sexy to make it just really, palatable, right? I mean,
Yeah,
not palatable, but like to make it exciting. Yeah,
I
rice milk
never
can
knew
be
you felt
exciting,
that way about rice milk, but okay.
right? I know.
So
Oat
what
milk. I
has
know. Californians and their weird milk. So we are at the end. Are we already almost at 25 minutes? This interview is too short, but I would like to present to you a closing question. So I'd like you to stop and close your eyes for just a moment, Edalia.
yeah.
And in your mind's eye, who is Edalia at this very second? And then who do you envision Edalia has yet to be?
Do I open my eyes and say, or
Yes, you can open your eyes now.
okay, cool. Um, who is Adalia in this second, and who will she be? Hmm. In this second, Adalia is someone in a state of flux. I am. Um, Theatres have been opening post lockdown at an alarming
Hmm.
rate. All sorts of brilliant opportunities have been coming my way, which is fantastic. And I've just been riding these things like
Hmm.
a horse or a surfboard. And yeah, now I'm in this state of flux of coming back to my heart and
Mm.
changing the way I do things and
Yeah.
like things that before like lockdown and COVID last year were like on a railway train. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm going. This is where I'm going. Full steam ahead. And
Hmm.
now I've like paused, changed. The year has happened. Stuff's opened. It's like, are we going back to how things were? No. And now I'm in that space, and I've started piecing things together, and it's
Hmm.
quite beautiful seeing how things are shaping, and there are risks involved, and yeah. So that's where I am right now in this second. And where will I be in the future? Um, I will be on a beautiful bridge to that that destination. And like I'm starting weaving this bridge with these
Yes.
things. And then in the future, let's say a year in the future, 2 years in the future, 3 years, let's say 2 years in the future. 2 years in the future, I will be on this bridge. And it's still a bridge, but it's being constructed and it's getting more beautiful and stronger, more solid in its foundations. But it's not like you don't know where it's going. It's not like I've reached there. It's just that the bridge is becoming more and more fantastical and more
Yes.
strong and more beautiful. And I feel like that's where I want to be. I want to be on the bridge. And maybe it's connecting all these different people, and maybe it's connecting all these different places and things. And I don't want it to be a bridge that's necessarily going to a specific place. And it's like, I'm
Yes.
going to get there, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get there. It's the bridge. I'm all for the bridge, living on the bridge.
Yes, I know. I was going to say that you're not reaching any destination. The bridge is that beautiful creation. That bridge became the hub because, like I feel I was actually seeing when you were describing it being interconnected with other people building their bridges to connect with yours. I just love that. That's so beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You are a fairy. You have fairy dust. I don't want this to ever end. I just, but I do want to thank you. You are a marvelous guest, and for being here with us and our audience, for tuning in. Um, Thank you to Edalia for being here. And I would like our viewers to please follow her. She is on social media, on Instagram and Twitter at Edalia Day, and on Facebook at Edalia Theater. You could also find her on YouTube. Her YouTube is youtube.com/C/Edalia Day Creative. And then please don't also forget to check out her main artist page. That is www.edeliaday.co.uk. This is where you can find the link to purchase her videos and her books. We hope you will support all the programs put out by the Poetry Global Network by subscribing to our YouTube channel and liking and sharing our videos. Have a beautiful day, folks.
Over lockdown, I trained as an animator on top of my other things, and I've been doing all sorts of animated poetry projects. The first one I did was this one, which I'm going to share, called Dreaming of Being Seen. Sometimes the world holds so much mystery. Sometimes something as simple as smiling at someone in the street and not getting a frown in return can be golden. Sometimes you wear a mask. More often, you wear your home. Dress yourself in bedclothes and Twitter feeds. Sometimes even your home is somewhere you can't go. You can spend a lifetime dreaming of seeing someone. You can spend a lifetime dreaming of being seen.
Sometimes the world can have so much mystery. Sights you didn't know existed. Places you've never been. You can lose a lifetime dreaming of being seen.